What if I told you that college athletics today looks nothing like it did 5 years ago, let alone 30, 40, or 50 years ago? The rapidly changing landscape in college athletics is leaving a lot of schools, student athletes, and fans confused and sometimes behind. So what are the changes made to collegiate athletics? How do student athletes navigate it? And what can we fans expect in the years moving ahead? Gordon Voit is the founder of 3D Athlete, a former sports journalist and Heisman Trophy voter, and he joins us here to break down those questions and more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Chen. The landscape in college athletics is rapidly changing faster now than it has been in the last several years. People will point to changes from the BCS to the college football playoff, but the reality is in the past 3 to 5 years, the landscape has changed drastically, leaving many colleges, student athletes, and us fans confused and sometimes behind. So what are these changes and what does it look like today? Gordon Voit is the founder of 3D Athlete. He is a former sports journalist, former Heisman Trophy voter. He joins us today. Gordon, welcome back to Face the Issues.
Sam, A, I love you, so I'm really happy to be here with you. And B, we got a ton to talk about, so I hope that Micah, the producer, is going to give us like 4 hours. So we got a lot to cover. Let's do this.
This is fantastic. Gordon, it's so great to have you back. Always appreciate your insights into this world. Let's start from the very top. I mean, changes to college athletics is something that we're all familiar with. Conference realignment is nothing new. You know, changing from BCS to college football playoff. These changes happen. But the change has been pretty drastic in the last few years. One of the things that has taken headlines is this thing called NIL. Can you explain to us what NIL is and why has it made such a difference in how college athletics works?
Absolutely. So basically, college athletics existed in this really uncomfortable marriage where you have the kind of the veil of amateurism, but you really are covering up something that's very professional and worth a lot of money. And so for decades, we've had the Olympic model, which says, okay, you're an amateur athlete, but you're allowed to make money off sponsorships and attaching your name, which has value, to a product. And so Olympic athletes can be on the Wheaties box and get paid for that and still be classified as amateur. But for some reason in college athletics, they have been shielded from antitrust laws. And so what you have now is athletes are able to attach their name to a brand in exchange for money. So it's basically recouping the value of their name, image, and likeness. And so in the absence of being able to get endorsement money, there was a black market. And so it's like Jimbo Fisher famously said, we've always had NIL, but now it's just legal. So I'm very glad that athletes, A, get a chance to make money off of their value. I mean, this is America after all. And B, now it's out in the open. So we don't have to do this shady backroom deal stuff anymore.
And Gordon, to your credit, viewers may remember this several years ago. You were on the show. We were talking about some of the challenges in the NCAA, how the NCAA makes money. And you said at that point that something had to give in this conversation. And your way forward was let the market be the market. If a regular student makes money because of their name, image, or likeness, nobody has anything to say about it, and student athletes should be in that same boat. You called this several years ago, so let's make sure we give credit where credit is due.
Well, hey, don't look at my performance with NCAA March Madness pools or fantasy football, because I'm generally pretty bad at prediction. Good at analysis, bad prediction. That's one thing that I nailed. And it's very interesting because we're really only halfway there, and this is something I'm sure we'll get to later on in the program, but this was a little bit of a pressure valve release, right? Mm-hmm. Allowing athletes to make money off of their name, image, and likeness. But it's really only halfway in the process of allowing athletes to make the full value of their presence to a university. And so that's going to be things like recouping the value of a media rights deal, so getting a cut of the action. So that's probably something we'll talk about later. But this was a very much needed pressure valve release for student athletes.
One of the interesting things, and I don't know how much of our viewers recognize this, but there are sports we know that make the school money, mostly football. Schools, sports that athletes will go on to professional contracts and so forth and do well. But there are other sports that are where athletes, that this is their only avenue to make money is to use name, image, and likeness. And of course, the sport that comes to mind for me is swimming, where you have a number of high school swimmers in the 2020 Summer Games. Some 19 members of Team USA were teenagers. And without NIL, those teenagers were never able to make deals. I mean, Lydia Jacoby at 17 years old won the gold medal in Alaska, now at the University of Texas. Prior to NIL, she would never have been able to make a deal because she was headed to an NCAA school. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes no sense. It's like you said earlier, if a student's really talented at music, the university isn't saying, hey, you can't do a gig, you can't sign a record deal. If there's a really talented painter who's selling paintings at a gallery, universities don't say, hey, don't sell that, don't sell that. It's like, why are we limiting something that is safe, ethical, and legal? It doesn't make any sense. And that's why, in a combination of public perception and the courts are now behind this too, we're starting to see some change that's been a long time coming.
Yeah. Well, the case that did it was NCAA versus Alston in 2021, a 9-0 unanimous decision. And of course, that came on the heels of O'Bannon v. NCAA, which was in the Ninth Circuit. But both of these found that the NCAA's policy at the time violated antitrust laws, which opened the door for the NIL deals that the NCAA has introduced. But Gordon, let me ask you this. How does this shift how colleges function? Because a lot of the NIL deals are coming from outside groups, right? So Baylor University running back Richard Reese has a deal now from Reese's, right? And so there's a lot of deals that are from outside groups. Does this affect how colleges do recruiting and how they operate?
Absolutely, and it's a really important distinction to make between sort of outside and internal. I think they're both great though. So you've got Bijan Robinson, running back for Texas, famously signed Bijan Mustardson deal, so he's leveraging that. And then very recently, Kansas's quarterback with the last name of Bean, Jason Bean, signed a deal with a bean company. But to answer your question, there's those outside deals that happen, but then there's also internal departments. So Northwestern University, my alma mater, and many others have come up with collectives, which are being called collectives. So essentially, boosters can donate to this collective, and then they make payments directly to athletes for things like appearing at a camp. That's something that's very popular now. Oklahoma softball is one of the many programs doing this, where they will pay players using this collective account, basically to keep them happy, and their presence is worth money, so I'm glad that they're able to make money off of that. But yes, there is a very important distinction there between outside. So you've got former Michigan tight end Jake Butt had a toilet paper deal, kind of funny there. But then you've got these collectives, which are pooling money, and so alumni can donate there. And I think a critic would say, isn't that going to create fractures within the team? And I mean, there's always going to be that, but this was happening before anyway. It's just out in the open. Players were always getting different compensation packages. And also, in the professional ranks, it's business. And so we're seeing the professionalization of sports come into the light in college. And so I think that a lot of the fears of, it's going to turn into this backstabbing, it's like, that doesn't happen at the pro level, so why would it happen at the college level?
Gordon, let me ask you this. There's one of the concerns that's been raised, at least, is that this is close to or may drive us toward a pay-the-play system, especially with recruiting. And the idea that the college that pays the most money for the recruit is the one that gets the recruit. We've seen this scandal play out before with the recruitment of Cam Newton and others. And I think most people will look at this and say, I think an individual should be allowed to make money. A student athlete shouldn't be disqualified from making money using their name, image, and likeness. But I'm not sure fans across the board are comfortable with the idea that colleges can pay their recruits to come. They feel like that's a little bit more professional. Is there a fear that this is where it goes? I mean, there's been some debate with the University of Alabama and other schools that accusations that they're already doing this.
Well, first you brought up two really interesting points. One is public perception. I think that the research that's coming out with organizations like Arizona State University has been monitoring this. Public perception is surprisingly on the side of allowing athletes to negotiate, which I am all for. I think that we need to apply that same name, image, and likeness sort of allowance. We need to let players negotiate for a piece of everything. I don't understand why they shouldn't be allowed to negotiate just like they were in any other industry. So I think one, public perception. Did you know that only 16% of people, according to Arizona State University, are against name, image, and likeness? And now I haven't seen the figures for what you call pay to play. I would consider more just the ability to negotiate. I don't know the exact figure, but I would guess that it's actually higher than you might think. And here's where this whole thing is just a massive gray area. Because how do you possibly police the reason behind the payment? So say Sam Chen is an incredibly talented tight end coming out of Pennsylvania. And there's a booster in State College that wants Sam Chen to come to his university. Now, legally, according to the current rules, he can't say, Sam Chen, come to Penn State, and I will give you a $500,000 name, image, and likeness deal. He's not allowed to say that. It can be like, hey, if you happen to come here, then there might be something waiting for you, and then when you commit, then the deal goes public. But it's impossible to police that. Does that make sense? It's impossible to police the reasoning behind the payment. And so what we have now is a lot of coaches are really upset because there's just so much confusion about what's allowed and what's not. Because, like I said, according to the rules now, you can make money off your name, image, and likeness, but it can't sway your decision to attend the school. How can anybody possibly know that? I think if it was up to me, I think we should just do away with it all. And we should be allowed to say, hey, Sam, you're incredibly valuable, and you should be allowed to make money off of attending our university. I don't really see the stark distinction that the NCAA sees with that, simply because how do you know what the reason is? You can't police it.
Well, that's a good observation, Gordon. We're going to cut the break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about how this impacts recruiting. You're now in that business. I want to talk about what this is like for the student athletes. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. My guest again is Gordon Voit from 3D Athlete. Gordon, thank you again for joining us. Gordon, I want to continue this conversation on NIL, and I want to shift to how it shifts the landscape, not just for colleges, but for those athletes who are going. You said something when we left off that a lot of this is generating confusion. That is the norm when there's a new rule that's in place. We certainly added to that the challenges of some other rules, one-time transfer waivers, early enrollment, the COVID extra year. You got these sixth-year seniors now.
Creating all kinds of issues.
So let me ask you this. I mean, you are now in the recruitment space. You're in the agent space. What has the impact of this been on the student athlete?
Oh, it's been tremendous. Because there are these kids now that are able to have a job, so to speak. I mean, sports is their job, and now they're actually getting paid to do it. And they're able to do things, not have to go out of pocket, to have their parents come visit them, just having extra spending money. But again, it ties into a fairness, into economic fairness of they are getting the money that they're worth in the marketplace. And so I'm very happy about that. I talked to a lot of young men and young women who are committing to colleges. And one of the first questions I ask after, what was the process like is, are you getting involved with NIL? And their faces light up. It's something that's very exciting to them. And so I love getting a chance to walk with those student athletes through that process. And so my company, 3D Athlete, prepares resumes, video resumes for these athletes so they can market themselves, because this is no different than any other pitch meeting. It's them saying, I do these things on the court. I have this social media reach and therefore value to you when I post it. And then these are my values. And so what I do is I package those things into one concise location, and then they can just send that off to schools. And I do the same thing with high school athletes, junior college athletes, looking to get hired, so to speak, by colleges. So in the recruiting game and name, image, and likeness game, it's the same thing. It's basically helping athletes package together their value in video form.
Is this new? I mean, there's a sense of which agents generally work with collegiate athletes or international athletes who are going pro. We don't hear a lot about agents who work with high school athletes and junior college athletes going next level. You're probably one of the first I've ever spoken to in this. Is this new, and is this born because the NIL world is now the world that we live in?
As for old or new, I think a better way of looking at it is just the way that it's grown, and that it used to be this sort of small, that there wasn't as much money involved. There's so much money on the line now that it's really just evolved into something different. It's not new, but there's just so much more money on the line. And what am I talking about there? I'm not just talking about the money that you can earn from name, image, and likeness. I'm talking about the cost of education. I looked at one study that said that college tuition is up 60-something% since the late 90s. So since the last time that a lot of these Gen X and elder millennial parents who are bringing their 17 and 18-year-olds onto college campuses for these visits, they're looking at the tuition number and they're doing the big, the wowza thing that they do in Looney Tunes. And so there's more on the line than ever from both perspectives, from a cost perspective with tuition and also with the value that is out there waiting for them and a payday, fairly deserved, I would say. And so it's not so much that it's new, it's just that the pressure has never been higher.
That's fair. Gordon, you talk a lot about how this is just the beginning. You said at the end of the last segment that there's, and to your point, we just saw the Supreme Court decision a year ago. We're just now walking into the NIL world. You said that there's a few different ways this can progress. Can you talk about those ways?
Absolutely. And I hope producer Mike is going to give us a third or a fourth hour on here. Because it's the same thing with any kind of prognostication. You've got minimalists and you've got maximalists. So a minimalist in this case would say, it's always going to be this amateur model and we're always going to have Big 12 football and, there's more money involved, but it's always going to look pretty much the same. Then more of a maximalist on the change spectrum would say, this thing is about to get blown up and we're going to a Super League NFL style system. And I think the most extreme change that a lot of folks watching this home don't realize is that one of the things that's on the table is breaking off from the NCAA altogether. And so this is why it's in the NCAA's best interest to sweeten the deal for these schools, because the biggest brands could very easily, so I'm talking the Texases, the USCs, the Floridas, the Georgias, the Alabamas, they could break off, form a 30 to 50 team Super League that would be incredibly lucrative from a TV perspective. And then you could take it even one step further past the Super League model, which is to say that, and this is I think a minority of people are predicting this, but we might have a situation in which Texas A&M's football team is not actually made up of students, in which case Texas A&M would license the ability to play football under their brand to essentially professional athletes. So it'd be like the Texas A&M football team brought to you by these professional players. And so that would do a number of things. They would be able to bypass Title IX, and you would have a situation in which Texas A&M football would have all of the cash that it's earning for itself and wouldn't have to subsidize the non-revenue sports, so swimming and diving, so on and so forth. And so that's a pretty alarming change, but that's evidence of just how much money is at stake here. And so when I talk about a fair negotiation, the NCAA knows it has to adapt or it could be passed over, because like I said, it could be just like that and 40 to 50 teams could all of a sudden just form a professional league. So that there are many different ways that this could shake out. I'm somewhere in the middle of those two. I don't necessarily see just professional athletes using the brand of a Texas A&M. I think that that's a little too extreme. I think it's going to be something more in the realm of what we see in soccer, which is arguably the most free market sport there is, professional soccer, and where we are going to have a super league that does sort of complement the traditional system. So it's very interesting. I've got a lot more to say about that, but I want to be sensitive to our time.
And do you think the NCAA is ending? I mean, to your point, I don't think a lot of people understand that the NCAA is just one of many many associations of college athletics. Of course, there's the NAIA that has been doing NIL much longer.
Right, 9 months longer.
Yeah,
exactly.
NJCAA, number of junior college associations. Mm-hmm. Do you see the NCAA ending, or do you see their move to adapt now, will it have the effect of they stay in the game?
I don't see it ending for two reasons. One is that when we're talking about the big dollar situations, that is a small fraction of the total membership. It's important to remember that, say we have 5 power conferences, 6 power conferences, depending on how you want to look at it, times about 12 schools. That's like less than a third of the membership of Division I, which is 363 teams. And then that's a small fraction of there are more than 1,000 universities that are in Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, and NCCAA, which is the Christian school organization. And so when we're talking about in Alabama, in Oregon, these big brands, we're talking about a small fraction. So I think that the other 1,000 schools in the country still need a governing body. But point number 2, aside from just the fact we're talking about a small percentage, is that they're not dumb. They know how to adapt. There's a lot of smart people working in the NCAA. Now that they see that public perception is going towards change, and statewide and even federal legislation is being enacted or being debated, I should say, in the case of federal, they're sensing the same momentum shift that we're sensing. And so for them to take a red line approach to that would be incredibly unpopular. And I just don't think that would ever happen unless everybody at the NCAA wants to get fired.
So put our collegiate athletics fans' minds at ease. Will we still be rooting for our favorite rivalries in the next few years to come?
Oh, absolutely. College sports is amazing. See, and I'm such a big fan of regionalism. I love the fact that I can get in my car and drive 10 hours east and have a totally different experience than driving 10 hours south to go get some tacos in the state of Texas, which I know you and I have both lived in. Our country is a smorgasbord, and I love that. And that's one of my absolute favorite things about our country, the fact that you can be up in the tip of Alaska and you can be down in the bayou in Louisiana and meet a totally different kind of culture. College sports is one of the last bastions of that regionalism. It's sweaty, it's exciting, it's imperfect. We're talking about teenagers running around on a field. There's a much higher rate of variance than professional football, which is very rigid and structured. So the product has never been better, I think. I think it's incredibly exciting, and part of the reason, other than just sort of like sort of a nostalgic, I hope that it stays the same. No, it is financially beneficial for these rivalries to continue, because that's what, I look at my phone right now, probably half of my group chats right now revolve around some dumb college sports debate or trolling each other, right, from different fan bases. And so in addition to that just being really fun and part of American culture, it's also incredibly financially beneficial for that to continue. So I'm extremely long on college sports.
Good to hear. Gordon Voit, thank you again. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Gordon, as you know, we always close out with a little bit of some personal fun. For our viewers who don't know, Gordon has in the past been a voter in the Heisman Trophy Trust. He's been one of those mysterious individuals casting his votes for the nation's best football player. Gordon, you are no longer in that. I mean, for obvious reasons. I'm not sure it's ethical to have an agent involved in that.
Yeah.
But you still follow college sports closely. If you had to put a watch list together for the Heisman Trophy, who's on your watch list?
So being the capitalist that I am, I think that the financial pressure behind the situation is the most accurate, which has been proven statistically. So odds-wise, Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, C.J. Stroud, they're kind of in a class by themselves. There's a big drop-off then to Blake Corum from Michigan, running back, Caleb Williams, USC, Bo Nix from Oregon. And my pick to click, Drake May from North Carolina. Why is this guy not getting more attention right now? Through 9 games, he has 3,964 yards, 31 passing touchdowns, which leads the nation, just 3 interceptions, over 71% completion percentage, plus 500 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. I don't understand. And he's a freshman.
Wow.
He was only the 8th highest rated quarterback coming in this recruiting class. Yeah, he was a top 50 overall recruit. But this guy is incredible. He's having the best, and he's got one of the worst defenses in Division I, not just Power 5. But in Division I, and he's got to go up, fight that. So he's fighting a headwind. He's a freshman. He's got arguably the best stats in the country. Drake May from North Carolina is doing incredibly. Hendon Hooker from Tennessee probably will win, especially because he closes the year with Vanderbilt. So if he throws 6 touchdowns, that's going to be the last thing in voters' minds.
All right, but your dark horse are the Carolina Tar Heels. And
Drake May.
Gordon Voit, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Sam. It was an honor.
Always an honor on our end. We appreciate your insights. That is our show for tonight. I want to thank each of you for tuning in. And join us again right back here next week. My name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.